What's up, everybody? This is our first official Dorks YouTube video. This is Philip, and today we'll be talking about Oko, Thief of Crowns, and what the big deal is about him. So let's start off by just taking a look at Oko as he is. He's 3 mana, comes in with 4 loyalty, which is really high, has a +2 and a +1, both which are very defensive, and the +1 is both offensive and defensive. His Neg 5 is an ability I don't think I've seen used one time in 100 games of Standard, so it's not even worth bringing up. It's the fact that both of his pluses are incredibly good. But now let's go ahead and take a look and see how Oko compares to other Planeswalkers of 3 mana. First we have the Royal Scions. +1 draw a card, then discard a card. A second +1 to give target creature +2/+0, first strike, and trample until the end of turn. The main problem with them being they have no way to protect themselves, where Oko, in situations, does have the methods of protecting himself. On the other hand, though, the Royal Scion's -8 can win games. In a perfect world, you're going to draw 4 cards and deal 11 damage. Worst case scenario, you're going to draw 4 cards and do 4 damage. But at least you get to draw 4 cards. But overall, Oko absolutely blows them out of the water. He comes down, either turns something of yours into a 3/3, or doesn't. Best case scenario, your Royal Scions come down, make one of your creatures have +2/+7 first strike, and you swing into something and hopefully kill their questing beast or Knight of the Ebon Legion or anything that you can. Next we have Kaya Orzhov Usurper, who is just really bad. Really bad, but it's a 3 mana mythic planeswalker. In Standard, her +1 is really only ever going to make the opponent's magic mirror cost more, or just exile cards out of their graveyard that maybe they can recur with the Cauldron of Eternity. But other than that, it's really not that good. And then her -1, which is gonna exile the elk that Oko turns his food tokens into, it's just not good. And then her -5 just deals damage equal to the number of cards in exile. I mean, if you +1 her enough, maybe that can win the game, but she's not going to live through a questing beast to be able to even pull the ultimate off. Next we have Sorin Imperious Bloodlord, who isn't really good either, but I include him because he can ultimate as soon as he hits the table. And that ultimate gets around counterspells, which there are a lot of really good ones in play right now. Also, Sorin has 2 pluses, but they're also really not that good when compared to Oko's turning everything into elk. Sure, you can give your vampires +1/+1 counters, and they will stay when it turns into an elk. But once it's an elk, you can't give it +1/+1 counters anymore, and you also can't sacrifice it to Sorin to do the 3 damage. Now we move on to Gideon Blackblade, who is probably almost as good as Oko Thief of Crowns, but just nobody ever plays him. He's a 4/4 as long as it's your turn, which means Oko can't make him into an elk. His +1 will make it a little bit easier for you to keep Gideon safe while still putting the damage out there. Then if you can get him to 6, you can exile a non-land permanent, which is really good. The problem is keeping him alive till then. I mean, you can say that giving another creature you control vigilance is a form of protection that keeps Gideon from taking damage, but if you +1 him, Questing Beast swings in and still takes him down to 1, and then kills him next turn. So it's just, Oko turns Questing Beast into a 3/3. You really can't compare the defensive power of his +1 to any other Planeswalker +1s. And with Gideon Blackblade, we're going to walk away from standard Planeswalkers for a second and touch on some other really powerful Planeswalkers that aren't standard legal but do also cost 3 mana. We'll begin this by talking about Saheeli Rai. when she came out, she had an infinite combo with Felidar Guardian, where you just made infinite hasting Felidar Guardians, blinking in Saheeli Rai, and then you just would swing for game with all of your Felidar Guardian tokens. But other than that, she's only mildly okay. Being able to scry one is sweet, and then doing one damage, I mean, okay. She still comes in and in today's standard would die to a questing beast. Doesn't really have a way to defend against questing beast. And then her neg 7 is really only good if you're running artifact tribal. And now we're on to Liliana of the Veil. Easily the standard of how strong a 3-mana planeswalker can be. Liliana of the Veil right now sits at around $80, and when she rotated into Modern, immediately jumped up to 120, and has since then settled back down, but still, she still is not as good as Oko. And that's incredible to just think about. When this card was in Standard, it was amazing. There was nothing wrong with it. It was a win card. But I mean, now, discarding isn't that big of a deal when you have an Oko on the table. I mean, worst case, I'm going to discard a 5-drop, and then I'm still going to drop Questing Beast and kill Lily. And then her neg 2 doesn't target. So, you just pick me, and I'm going to sacrifice anything else I have other than my Questing Beast. And she's just not going to 6 in today's standard. She doesn't compare to Oko still. And that is just upsetting, because this was one of the best planeswalkers ever printed at her time of release. I want to throw a little curveball at you, and we're going to talk about a 4-mana planeswalker who is probably the only planeswalker that compares to Oko in power level, and that is Jace, the Mind Sculptor. I mean, 4 mana, comes in with 3, okay, dies to Lightning Bolt, dies to Questing Beast, if you don't plus him. Which, why are you going to plus him? His plus is pretty much surveil your deck, or just mill the top card of your opponent's deck. In all the games I've seen Mind Sculptor played, you're going to brainstorm every time. That's it. There's no other reason to run him, and then sometimes you're going to unsummon something. His ult is irrelevant. 12 counters is incredibly high to get to, especially if you're mostly going to be zeroing him. And I think he really does compare to Oko's power, but in a different way. He doesn't protect himself, but he gives you card advantage, and that is something that is just as good. And finally, I just want to talk about a couple of cards that just kind of don't really answer Oko and combo with Oko, and it's just some of the better cards that you see used, some of the highest used creature cards being Brazen Borrower, Murderous Rider, Gilded Goose, and Questing Beast. And Gilded Goose turn 2 Okos, and if you don't use the food token, you just drop Oko and animate the food token, or if you do turn 2 Oko, you just turn the Gilded Goose into a 3/3. Your Questing Beast is going to drop, it's going to swing in, hit Oko. Oko's going to turn it into a 3/3 next turn. Murderous Rider is just equally as bad. You're either going to use your turn 3 to kill the Oko, lose 2 life, then you're going to get hit with the 3/3 that Oko turned one of his things into. Same thing with Brazen Borrower, except you don't lose life. And, it is only 2 mana, but you're going to hold your turn 2 to bounce an Oko. It's just still not good, and he still gets to turn something into a 3/3. So, there's just no real good answer to Oko. And Monday is BNR, and he's probably going to get banned. I don't really think he should be. There are ways to play around him. Grixis Fires does really good against him. But other than that, he's just really, really good, and there's not a whole lot that stops him. I mean, everything you're playing against Oko is Elk Tribal. That brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the show and want to support it, you can like and subscribe. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Links are in the description below. And don't forget to listen to our podcast, which we post on Spotify, Google, and iTunes. And you can catch that every other Thursday. Thank you so much, and remember, unban Grizzlebrand in Commander.